Hello and welcome to Join Us at the Table. My name is Ben.
And I'm Albanie. And today here with us, we have Claire Schlemme. Claire is the founder of Renewal, which is the next generation ingredients company that upcycles byproducts like okara into high quality ingredients and keeps valuable nutrition in the supply chain. So Claire, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Would you mind starting off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you originally got involved in upcycling?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be talking to you guys. So I got into upcycling actually through my last venture. So I co-founded Boston's first organic juice company. And it was in that role that I saw firsthand how much byproduct can be produced when you're making food. So we started that company really with this goal to connect New England farmers with people in the city, and we're really excited about the opportunity to do that. But quickly, I saw just how much of that amazing produce that we were buying was going to waste, and all this nutrition, that pulp at the end of the day, it was just mountains that we had to we had no other use for. So I was very inspired by that to try to find a solution that would help improve the efficiency of our supply chain and our food systems. So I actually just had a very fortuitous conversation with Min Sai, who's the owner of Hodo Foods, based in Oakland, and he makes tofu. And the first step of making tofu is making soy milk. He had a very analogous problem to what I had seen with my juice business, which is that he had just an immense amount of this byproduct called okara, the soybean pulp that was left over from his production process. And we really just bonded over the, that pain of having to throw out this amazing nutrition that is an amazing product, and that you've really, carefully sourced the inputs for. So, we were buying all organic produce, trying to source it from local farms as much as possible around Boston. And Min, part of his differentiating point is that he's making some of the best tofu in North America, and he does that by sourcing the best beans. So he doesn't want to be throwing out this extra nutrition from the beans either. So anyways, I got my hands on some okara, tried it out, realized very quickly how amazing this was, similar to what I had seen as the potential for these byproducts from the juice business. But what really excited me was the scale. So at that food production scale, it made a really interesting proposition for a business, because he's producing about 8 to 9 tons of this byproduct every day. So that was the origins of Renewal Mill, and then from there, it really we grew to understand just how many places there are in our food system where we have these inefficiencies and where we're losing this nutrition, and so that made us think about moving beyond okara to really creating an entire upcycled ingredient portfolio.
Gotcha. That's great that you're able to recognize that there was a need to be using these byproducts, and so all that nutrition isn't going to waste. Could you tell us about what the overall goal of Renewal Mill is and why upcycling is so important to fight against climate change?
Absolutely, yes. So our goal is really to be attacking global food loss. Food waste is reducing food waste is the number one solution to fighting climate change right now, according to Project Drawdown. That's done a lot of work looking at all the tools that we have to fight climate change. And really that comes from the fact that we're so incredibly inefficient when we think about food production. So you may have heard some of the statistics around, 30 to 40% of the food that we produce is never eaten. And what that translates to in terms of the lost resources, greater than the area of China is farmed every year in the world for food that is never eaten, which is tremendous when you think about all the water and the fertilizer and, of course, the land that was used to produce that. So when it comes to being efficient with our resources, we need to be really efficient with the food that we produce. And so, there's waste across the whole food supply chain, everything from crops left in the field that never get harvested, all the way to, the moldy strawberries that end up in the back of your refrigerator at home. And there's lots of different ways that we need to be approaching all these different places where food slips out of the food supply chain. Dealing with kind of consumer behavior changes on one end, to figuring out ways to, say, get the ugly produce or the second-rate produce taken out of the fields. We focused on food production because we saw this as really the low-hanging fruit in terms of where we could affect major change. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is that in food production, as I alluded to before, it's that food waste is very concentrated. And so you have that ability to reach scale rapidly, as opposed to, say, trying to get all the leftovers from restaurants every night, right? There's a logistical challenge to getting like the quantity and the aggregation. The other thing is that it's totally food safe. So it's absolutely arbitrary that we call we've two places where things are coming out of the soy milk machine. You have the soy milk coming out one side, the okara coming out the other. We've just arbitrarily decided that the soy milk is what we eat and the okara is what we throw away. And so you can bypass a lot of food safety issues, which again are more challenging when you're dealing more downstream with the food system. So our whole goal is really to just be that bridge maker that allows for efficient use of produce when it comes into food manufacturing facilities. And just to put some numbers on it, so about 60% of the soybean mass that comes into the tofu factory doesn't make it into the tofu, and instead ends up as this waste product, okara. But and so if you think about it, that's like wasting 60% of the resources that went into growing those soybeans in the first place. If you implement an upcycling solution like Renewal Mill, now you're utilizing 100% of that soybean to reach human plates, and thereby, therefore using all of the resources to actually feed people.
Right. Yes. I love how you touch on the food safety component, because I think that's such a misconception that because we refer to it as food waste, that it's dirty and it's unhealthy and whatnot, but that's not true at all.
That's right.
So we know you make soybean okara, and we saw that you recently started making oat okara. Can you tell us a little bit about the specifics of making okara from oat? And can you make okara out of anything?
That's a great question. So that's right. So we're moving into the byproduct from oat milk production. So that's the oat pulp that's left behind from oat milk manufacturing, very analogous to the soybean pulp. Similar in the fact that it's super nutrient dense. So it's got a lot of protein and a lot of fiber in it. So it makes it a very interesting ingredient from that perspective. It's funny that you mentioned the word okara. Technically, okara just refers to the soybean pulp. It was actually a really interesting find, and we were really excited to find out what that word means. So it's a Japanese word. Soybean okara has a pretty rich culinary tradition in East Asia, especially because if you think about making soy milk at home, which is how people traditionally would have made it, before industrialized food manufacturing, you were closer to understanding the money that went into buying those soybeans. And so you would use the okara. And so there's a lot of kind of traditional recipes that utilize that okara. So okara is actually, the etymology is really interesting of that word. The kara means like husk or hulls, and o is kind of an honorific. So the word itself actually refers to kind of honoring the whole bean, which we think is just totally apropos for what we're trying to do with it. It is actually already used as an identifier as the soybean pulp, and so that's the technical reference to it. We've sort of gotten in the habit of referring to other leftover pulps as okara because it's an easy way to refer to it. So technically that may not be where we actually, like, how we actually call this oat product, depending on the regulations around it. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of other pulp type byproducts coming out of processes. Like we're focused primarily in that plant-based milk space as we start to grow our portfolio. And so there you do see other like almond milk, like the almond pulp from almond milk manufacturing and things like that. So yeah, remains to be seen exactly how we're gonna phrase the new ingredients coming in, but Okara has kind of become our shorthand for any leftover pulp.
Gotcha. So, given that there is this rise of different alternative flours and things like that, and all these new avenues to transform these pulps into new things, what are some barriers and opportunities for getting Okara flour and other alternative flours into products and marketplaces?
Yeah, great question. So, I think some of the barriers are just timeline. Some of the larger food companies. So it's usually new ingredient sales can take 2 to 3 years for larger food companies. So that's one barrier, is that it takes a lot of time to nurture a relationship with the food company, really show them what upcycled ingredients can do. And I think one of the things that hasn't been as much of a challenge is that we haven't had the need to kind of we haven't had the need to like show companies how valuable upcycled ingredients are, which is great. I think people, especially in the food industry, seem to recognize that the next big mega trend in food is that movement from good for you to good for you and the planet. So that has been really helpful for us. I think another barrier is just, really understanding how these alternative flours work. I mean, we're definitely seeing that alternative and gluten-free flours are trending. They're the biggest kind of driver of the overall growth of the flour market right now. They're, kind of topping the trend lists. They were one of Whole Foods trends that was named at the end of last year. But I think some of it comes from just like understanding what the flour can do. We've been sort of so narrowly focused on wheat flour and seeing that as like the ingredient that we use for any sort of flour-based applications. And so, being able to share and show people that kind of educational component on how these different products can be used is probably one of the bigger challenges. And that's what, we work with a fantastic product developer, Alice Medrich, who's just as magical in the kitchen. And she, her last cookbook was a James Beard Award winner. And it was all around flavor flours. And the whole point of the cookbook, even though it was gluten-free, the point was not to be gluten-free per se, but really to show that, in the flour world, as we do with a lot of other places in food, we just become so focused on one or two ingredients when really there's a whole world of ingredients out there that can do all kinds of like really cool things for flavor and texture and creating new products. So it's really about, I think the challenge is really educating and showing people what these new ingredients can do, or new to us ingredients can do.
Great. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm so excited to see what more expansion, what else is to come in terms of ingredient usage and how we can upcycle different things. So we also recently saw that Renewal started a crowdfunding campaign, and we're curious, can you tell us a little more about your decision to use this funding model and how it benefits both you at Renewal and your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had been thinking about it for a while. As like to get the juice company in Boston off the ground, we had run a Kickstarter. It was like kind of at the beginning of Kickstarter starting. And we just really benefited from a lot of the additional things that you get from bringing together a community, beyond just obviously the money that comes in. So we thought that this was a good time to launch, especially given COVID and kind of this idea that when we go back to normal, we have this opportunity to build back better, as opposed to just getting back to what was normal, right? And so it seems like just the right moment to really solidify and form a formal community around what we're doing. And we had been asked before about, launching something like this because of just so much interest in the space and so many people that want to support it and want to be part of it in a really tangible way early on. And that's exactly what we've been seeing, which is really exciting. I think, when we first launched, of course, it was like great to see some of the investments coming in, but I think even more so, it was just awesome to see some of the excitement coming from people who were investing and seeing that we really have quite a strong and big community that understands what we need to be doing to make the food system better. And that's an awesome extra piece that you get out of crowdfunding.
That's awesome. And kind of building on that aspect of forming a community and bringing people together, we actually had the opportunity to try your chocolate chip cookies and know more and kind of how did the recipes listed on your website come about?
Yeah, great question. So our cookies came about pretty organically. When we first got started, we were talking a lot about Okara and like the bigger vision for the business of being an upcycled ingredient supplier. But of course, with food, anywhere you go and talk to people, like the first question is, well, what does it taste like? I mean, that's what people want to know, of course, fair. And so we started, we realized, okay, we need to actually have a way that we're presenting this to people in some sort of food item. And so that's where we came upon the idea of coming up with like a chocolate chip cookie recipe. It's like a very beloved, easy to like item that would allow people to see how seamlessly and deliciously you can utilize an upcycled ingredient. And then, of course, like as we brought those as examples to different trade shows and exhibits that we were at, the next question was, oh, where do I buy these? And so that was the kind of launch of our CPG, our branded product line. For the recipes on the website, a lot of those come from Alice Medrich, our, a lot of the recipes on our website come from our product developer, Alice Medrich, who knows more, I think, about utilizing Okara flour than probably anyone at this point. And so, what we also aim to do is show just the range of ways, kind of, referencing back to what we talked about in terms of showing people how to use these ingredients, but really the range of applications. So, we started by calling it a flour because we thought that was we liked that links it to this idea of baking and baked goods. And I think that's how we think a lot about the use of flour. But it's also totally possible to use it as a great addition to like a smoothie. And in that way, we, use it as more of how we think of a powder. And so, the recipes just give us a chance to show these different ways that it can be used.
Awesome. And I can definitely attest to how delicious those cookies are. They're so, so good. And I really want to try the brownies as well.
Awesome.
So we saw that your co-founder, Carolyn Cotto, wrote a social media post recently about the importance of USPS for small businesses and how they mail their products to consumers. So we just wanted to know if you could touch a little bit on this. We know there's been a lot of talking and tension around USPS lately, and we just wanted to ask you like what's going on, how you're being affected, whatnot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny, when she wrote that, I think she wrote that kind of like in late spring, maybe early summer. And at the time we thought, this seems like, this isn't really going to be a problem, is it? And then here we are, like definitely focused on, oh my goodness, like, this is sort of unprecedented where we're heading. Yeah, some of the immediate impacts that we've seen are probably things that everybody has seen or felt just, in ordering online and having things shipped, is that we're seeing, extensive delays that we just have not seen before. So particularly when, we have a big drop off of products that have been ordered on our website, typically those would be scanned in at the post office within hours of being dropped off. We're now seeing that those don't get scanned in for, it can be up to a week before the post office even acknowledges that they've received the package, which is really alarming and quite shocking, I think. That's something that, never seen in the past before. So those delays are definitely hitting us. I think, it's hitting everybody, and I think consumers are somewhat they're somewhat forgiving, because I think they recognize the challenges that are out there, and that they're seeing this across the board with other things that they're ordering. But I think we really, we have a really nice system with using the postal service as a way to fulfill all of our direct to consumer orders, and we would ideally like that to continue. So certainly any sort of impacts that are coming from USPS are definitely going to be felt by us, and I'm assuming by other small businesses that really rely on USPS for fulfilling those orders.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting space to continue to keep our eyes on, and hopefully everything can work out with
For
being able
sure.
to get your products to your customers. Um, so, just in terms of getting people excited about upcycling, how can current students interested in upcycling and food waste get involved with Renewal Mill or similar companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say definitely, reach out to any of the companies that are out there. I know a lot of, most of the companies in this space are really young, and they're looking for anyone that wants to kind of lend a hand, whether it's kind of in more of the brand ambassador space, or helping with, help it well in the era before COVID, helping with demos and other sort of events that companies are doing. um, would also encourage students to look into the Upcycled Food Association, which is the new trade organization that's helping to promote the whole industry of upcycled foods, and see if there's opportunities for involvement there. Another Bay Area based group is ReFed, which is more broadly looking at food waste, for all the way, as we said, from farm to refrigerator. But they have a lot of cool things that they're doing as well around thinking about solutions for food waste.
And we also heard that you're looking for an operations and social media coordinator. Maybe you'd like to tell our students about this opportunity?
We absolutely are. Yeah. So speaking of small, scrappy companies looking for a helping hand, we are. So we are looking for someone that can help fulfill orders, and also can help lead some of the outreach on social media. We do a lot of talking to people in the plant-based space and the food waste space, and collaborating with them, and doing a lot of giveaways with other food companies that are similarly minded and mission aligned. So looking for someone that would be interested in a very dynamic work experience, and being able to kind of handle a couple of different roles like that.
Awesome. I'm sure there's bound to be a listener out there that's eager to apply for this job and seek out this opportunity. So that's actually all the questions we have for you today.
Great.
We want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us and discuss the importance of upcycling and just your journey on the path of reducing food waste. And yeah, just thank you so much. And we're sure that
Wonderful.
our students and our viewers are definitely going to love hearing from you.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm always happy to talk about upcycling, and get the word out about how what a great solution it is for delicious food, and also for better food for the planet. So thank you so much for having the conversation.
Absolutely.
We'd like to thank all of our wonderful viewers for tuning in to this week's Join Us at the Table. Here are some links if you want to learn more about Renewal Mill. And if you just can't get enough of us here at Join Us at the Table, check out the CFIE website to watch some of our other sessions or to learn more about upcoming CFIE events. See you next time!